outcome: to refresh and master the rules, principles, and coverage of the international regulation for the prevention of collision at sea, as amended in particular Rules 15, 16, and 17. Importance of the topic: students will have knowledge on what Convention on the International Regulation for Preventing Collision at Sea, 1972, and how it can be applied in different scenarios.
Hello and welcome to COLREG in depth today. I'm going to be looking at Rule 15, which is crossing situation, now calls Rules 15 fits again into Part B, Section 2, conducts of vessels inside of one another. So we're only going to be applying this rule when two vessels can actually see each other. So looking at the rule itself, when two power-driven vessels are crossing, serves to involve risk of collision, the vessel which has the other on our own starboard side shall keep out of the way and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. Now, aside from the fact that it points out if you've got the other on your starboard side, you shall keep out of the other way, there's a couple of important points to highlight. Firstly, crossing situations only apply when there's two power-driven vessels. So if one of them is not a power-driven, this rule cannot apply the other part. The other part to take away, of course, is you need to avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. This doesn't tell you specifically what action to take, but what you should avoid doing. This means you're free to either stop in the water and let the other one pass ahead of you. You could come around to starboard and pass astern of her. Another thing, of course, with this rule is compared to Rules 13 and 14, there's no definition what crossing situation is. So we're left to assume if it's not overtaking and it's not head-on, then it has to be crossing. So let's have a look at a couple of scenarios. So here is scenario number 1. So scenario number 1 is crossing situation. So this scenario is if vessel A has vessel B on her own starboard side with a relative bearing on the starboard with 54 degrees. So in this scenario, vessel A is a power-driven vessel and vessel B is also a power-driven vessel. So let's put it on in the area where it is on the high seas, and its visibility will be good, where vessels in sight of one another, and vessel A and vessel B are crossing. So as to involve, so definitely it will be involved in a risk of collision. Vessel A has vessel B on her own starboard side, which is, we can see on that image, vessel A is on the starboard side of vessel B. Vessel A has vessel B on her starboard side, and its relative bearing will be on the starboard 054 degrees. So in this scenario, we can apply Rules 15, which is exactly crossing situation. So in applying the rules in accordance with Rule 15, crossing situation, when two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel or vessel A has the other, which is vessel B on her own starboard side, shall keep out of the way. In accordance with Rule 15, vessel A shall, if the circumstance of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the vessel B. Crossing situation shall be deemed to exist when a vessel is approaching the other vessel from a direction right ahead to 112.5 degrees on any side of the vessel, except when vessels are meeting on reciprocal or nearly reciprocal courses. In crossing situation at night, a vessel would be able to see only green or red side light and mast headlight of the other vessel. So scenario number 2, wherein vessel A has vessel B on her own port side with relative bearing port 053 degrees. So the description of the scenario is both vessel A and vessel B are power-driven vessel, and it is located on the high seas with a good visibility wherein vessels can sight one another, and vessel A and vessel B are crossing so as to involve crossing situation risk of collision. Vessel A has vessel B on her own port side with a relative bearing of on port with 053 degrees. So rules that can be applied, it is rule 15 which is crossing situation. So it is the same as scenario number 1, wherein accordance with rule 15, crossing situation when two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel B, in which has the other, which is vessel A on her own starboard side, shall keep out of the way. And accordance with the rule 15, vessel B shall, if the circumstance of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the vessel A.
Scenario number 3, crossing situation. Description of scenario. Vessel A, power-driven vessel. Vessel B, power-driven vessel. Area, on the high seas. Visibility, good. Vessel in sight of one another. Vessel A and vessel B are crossing so as to involve risk of collision. Vessel A has vessel B on her starboard side. The relative bearing is starboard 030 degrees. Rules to be applied. Rule number 15, crossing situation. In accordance with Rule 15, crossing situation, when two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel A, which has the other vessel on her starboard side, shall keep out of the way. Vessel A shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the vessel B.
Next is the Rule 16 of the collision, which is described as action by give-way vessel. It's stated as every vessel which is directed to keep out of the way of another vessel shall, as far as possible, take early and substantial action to keep well clear. The rule first clearly stated that the give-way vessel shall be the one to take action, and since we already know how to identify if a vessel is the give-way or the stand-on vessel, then I think that it's all clear for us of which is which. Next are the key terms of the rule. Early and substantial. It basically means that the moment they saw each other and identify a risk of collision, the give-way vessel shall take substantial action to keep well clear so as to avoid the risk of collision and make sure that the stand-on vessel knows that the give-way vessel is indeed taking action. And in the moment that the give-way vessel does not take action and furthered its way with the risk of collision becoming greater, then the stand-on vessel will be confused if the give-way vessel will be taking action anytime soon. But most importantly, it has already violated Rule 16, which strongly states that the action must be early. And to further illustrate the rule, here are some scenarios applying the Rule 16. To further illustrate the rule, here are some scenarios applying the Rule 16. First scenario, which applies traffic separation scheme in overtaking situations. In this scenario, both vessels are power-driven vessels, having a good visibility with vessels in sight of one another. Vessel A is overtaking vessel B. And the rules to be applied in this scenario are Rule 10, which is traffic separation scheme, Rule 13, which is overtaking situation, and Rule 16, action by give-way vessel. To apply Rule 16, first, let us establish that the one overtaking the other vessel is the give-way vessel, which is the vessel A. And therefore, after the overtaking part, the give-way vessel shall take substantial action to keep out of the other vessel's way. In accordance with Rule 10, Traffic Separation Scheme, Paragraph A, Rule 10 applies to traffic separation schemes adopted by the organization and does not relieve any vessel of her obligation under any other rule. In accordance also with Rule 10 Traffic Separation Scheme, Paragraph B, Section 1, a vessel using a traffic separation scheme shall proceed in the appropriate traffic lane in the general direction of traffic flow for that lane. Also, in accordance with Rule 13, Overtaking Situation, Paragraph A, notwithstanding anything contained in the rules of Part B, Sections 1 and 2, any vessel overtaking any other vessel shall keep out of the way of the vessel being overtaken. And lastly, in accordance with Rule 16, action by give-way vessel, every vessel which is directed to keep out of the way of another vessel shall, so far as possible, take early and substantial action to keep well clear. The second scenario is a head-on situation where the vessels are meeting on reciprocal courses. Still, both vessels are power-driven vessels, having a good visibility with vessels in sight of one another. Vessel A is meeting Vessel B on reciprocal courses so as to involve risk of collision. Vessel A has Vessel B right ahead with a relative bearing of 000 degrees. The rules to be applied in this scenario are Rule 14, which is head-on situation, and Rule 16, which is action by give-way vessel. In accordance with Rule 14, head-on situation, Paragraph B, head-on situation shall be deemed to exist when a vessel A sees the other vessel ahead and by night she could see the masthead lights of the other in a line and or both side lights, and by day she observes the corresponding aspect of the other vessel. Also, in accordance with Rule 14, head-on situation, Paragraph A, when two power-driven vessels are meeting on reciprocal courses so as to involve risk of collision, each shall alter her course to starboard so that each shall pass on the port side of the other. Lastly, in accordance with Rule 16, action by give-way vessel, both vessels A and B, which are directed to keep out of the way of each other shall, so far as possible, take early and substantial action to keep well clear.
Scenario number 3. Action by give-way vessel. Description of scenario. Vessel A, power-driven vessel. Vessel B, power-driven vessel. Area, on the high seas. Visibility, good. Vessel in sight of one another. Vessel A has a vessel B on her starboard side. The relative bearing is starboard 070 degrees. Vessel A and Vessel B are crossing so as to involve risk of collision. Vessel A is reducing speed to avoid collision with Vessel B. Rules to be applied. Rule 15, crossing situation, and Rule number 16, action by give-way vessel. In accordance with Rule 15, crossing situation, when two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel A, which has the other vessel on her starboard side, shall keep out of the way. Vessel A shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of Vessel B. In accordance with Rule 16, action by give-way vessel, every vessel which is directed to keep out of the way of another vessel vessel shall, so far as possible, take early and substantial action to keep well clear.
Good day, my name is Mark Anthony Not and I am bound to report Rule 17, which is entitled Action by Stand-on Vessel. So Rule 17 encapsulates 4 paragraphs: Paragraph A, Paragraph B, Paragraph C, and Paragraph D. So let's start with Paragraph A. Paragraph A is divided into 2 parts, Part 1 and Part 2. So let's start with Part 1. Part 1 states that where one of the 2 vessels is to keep out of the way, the other shall keep her course and speed. So in this paragraph, the vessel that is bound to keep her course and speed is called the stand-on vessel, while the vessel which is bound to keep out of the way is called the give-way vessel. So let's move on with the second part, which is the Part 2. So the Part 2 states that the latter vessel may, however, take action to avoid collision by her maneuver alone, as soon as it becomes apparent to her that the vessel that is bound to keep out of the way is not taking appropriate action in compliance with the rule. So in simple words, the stand-on vessel may alter her course alone if it becomes apparent to her that a give-way vessel is not taking appropriate or sufficient action to avoid any risk of collision. So let's move on with the Paragraph B. So Paragraph B states that when, from any cause, the vessel required to keep her course and speed finds herself so close that the collision cannot be avoided by the action of the give-way vessel alone, shall take action as will best aid the avoidance of collision. So in simple words, the give-way vessel shall take any means of action, may it be alteration of course, reducing of speed, and or stopping of engine in order to aid the avoidance of any possible collision. So in Paragraph C, it states that a power-driven vessel which take action in crossing situation in accordance with subparagraph A2 of this rule to avoid collisions with other power-driven vessel shall, if the circumstances at the case admit, not alter her course to port for a vessel on her port side. So in simple words, the vessel who has the other vessel on her port, if the circumstances admits, shall not alter her course to port. So let's move on with the Paragraph D. So Paragraph D states that this rule does not relieve the give-way vessel of her obligation to keep out of the way. So in relation with Rule 17, we have 2 scenarios which depicts the given rule. So in scenario number 1, we've got 2 vessels, vessel A and vessel B, which are both power-driven vessel and on the high seas with good visibility. So in this scenario, vessel A and vessel B are on a crossing situation. So this one involves a risk of collision, and the vessel B has the vessel A on her port side, which has a relative bearing of 010 degrees. So vessel A, which is required to keep out of the way, is not taking appropriate action in compliance with the rule. So vessel B took the pledge to take the action, in which her action is to reduce her speed to avoid collision. So moving on with scenario number 2. So in scenario number 2, we have 2 power-driven vessel, which is vessel A and vessel B. Both of the 2 are on the high seas and with good visibility. So in this scenario, vessel B has vessel A on her own starboard side, which has a relative bearing of 160 degrees starboard. So vessel A, which is required to keep out of the way, is not taking appropriate action in compliance with these rules. So vessel B took pledge to take the action. So her action is to reduce speed to avoid collision.